watching a video from CycleCruza's all-in-one sport bike channel. Subscribe today. These are my top 5 600cc SuperSport picks for street riding and street riding only. My number 1 pick, the 2007 and 2008 Honda CBR600rr. Alright, the pros for this bike. It has good linear power throughout the rev range with strong mid-range power. It's comfortable for street riding, which is attributed to its comfy seat, its raised clip-ons, and adjustable suspension. It comes set up perfectly for the street. It has a built-in electronic steering damper. It's lightweight, only weighs 385 pounds. Like I said, it's the lightest 600cc SuperSport available today, at least in stock form, which it handles great. It has a fuel gauge, one of only 2 SuperSports that have a fuel gauge, the only other bike being the 2013 Triumph Daytona 675R. It's the only 600 that still has the undertail exhaust, at least of the Japanese bikes. It has strong brakes, and it averages 44 miles per gallon, average, at least what I average so far, and that's with a 2 brothers slip-on, mind you. There's only 2 cons that I could come up for this near-perfect 600cc SuperSport bike for the streets. And that being that it lacks a slipper clutch, which, in my opinion, you don't really need a slipper clutch on this bike because it shifts so smooth. It doesn't have a gear indicator. I know some of you guys like to look at the dash and see what gear you're in, which I think is ridiculous because I sure enough don't need one. But for those of you that want one, this bike doesn't have one, but you can add one if you'd like. My number 2 pick, the 2013 and 2014 Triumph Daytona 675R. The pros for this bike, it has great low-end and mid-range power, great torque with this 3-cylinder engine. It has quick and precise handling, which is excellent for the twisties. The 675R version comes with the Brembo brakes and the Olin suspension. It has standard ABS brakes, and it has a slip assist clutch. And the stock clip-ons were raised 5 millimeters over the previous generation, so that means it's going to be less weight on your hands and wrist, so it's going to be more comfortable for street riding. And actually, you're going to get better street comfort on this bike than the previous generation. And also, for 2013, they added a fuel gauge, like the CBR600rr has always had. But yet, one up on the CBR600rr, it has a gear indicator. The cons for this bike, it has no stock built-in steering damper, so you definitely want to add one to help stabilize this bike at all speeds. This bike is not as aggressive looking as the previous generation, in my opinion. It's not as good looking to me. And the part availability and dealer support is pretty weak for this bike. So that's something you want to consider if you plan on getting this bike. My number 3 pick, the 2008 through 2010 Suzuki GSX-R600, better known on the streets as the Gixxer. Pros for the Gixxer, as you guys know, I'm not for electronic rider aids for a motorcycle, but this bike has rider modes A, B, and C. Mode C reduces the power by 40%, and this can be excellent for new riders who want to skip the 250 and start on a 600cc SuperSport. On this bike, just start on mode C, and as you gain skills and confidence with the power, work your way up to mode A, which is full power. Now mind you, mode C is only available on model years 2008 through 2010 on the 600. This bike does have good mid-range power. It has a slipper clutch. It has low seat height for you shorties out there. It has a soft, comfortable seat. It has a built-in electronic steering damper, although it's not as good as the Honda electronic steering damper. And it has an adjustable suspension, and the stock setup is pretty good for the street. And this bike does have a gear indicator. Cons for the Gixxer, it has low clip-ons, so more of your body weight's going to be put on your wrists and your hands. So on really long trips, it's going to give you rider fatigue. It's really not going to be as comfortable as the CBR600rr that has raised clip-ons. This bike does not have a fuel gauge, so you're going to have to rely on a low light fuel indicator or set your trip timer. The fuel efficiency on this bike is only 35 miles per gallon average. This bike is quite common, like everybody and his brother has this bike. It has an ugly stock exhaust, but you can easily remedy that with a slip-on. And this bike is 20 pounds heavier than the 2007 and newer CBR600rr. My number 4 pick, the 2013 and 2014 Kawasaki ZX-6r 636. The pros for this bike: Kawasaki redesigned this bike in 2013 and made it much more street friendly, you know, like the CBR600rr is and the GXR600 is. So now it has more linear power, stronger mid-range power. It has a slipper clutch, and from what I hear, it's easier to pull the clutch now. It's much softer clutch. It has softer suspension, which is good for soaking up those potholes and imperfections in the streets. It has adjustable suspension to show a big piston fork, and it has a gear position indicator on this bike. As far as the cons on this bike, the ergonomics remain track focused, so it's not going to be as comfortable as a CBR jigs or a Daytona 675R. The clip-ons on this bike is a little bit lower, so it's going to place more body weight on your wrists and hands. So on long trips, you're going to experience rider fatigue. It's just not going to be as comfortable riding on this bike as it would be on the CBR600rr on long trips. This bike does have electronic rider aids such as traction control and rider modes, but in my opinion, it's a con. Some people see it as a pro, but I see it as a con because I feel that anytime you add extra electronic shit on a bike, it's going to reduce the reliability on the bike. Also, this bike doesn't have a fuel gauge, so you have to rely on a low light fuel indicator or set the trip timer. Fuel efficiency is not all that fantastic on this bike. Most people are only averaging roughly about 38 miles per gallon on this bike. A lot of people are reporting cold and hot start issues, so you might want to check the forums to see any issues people are experiencing on this bike before you think about buying it. My number 5 and last pick, the 2007 through 2014 Yamaha YZF-R6. Pros for the R6: it's aesthetically pleasing. It's a great looking bike, no doubt. It has powerful top-end power. It actually has the most top-end power out of all the 600 Japanese Supersports. It has sharp and precise handling, so that's excellent for the twisties and carving the canyons. And it has a slipper clutch. Cons for the R6: it has no bottom end power, it's all top end power. It's like a chick with great big tits and no ass. And this is reflected in the higher quarter mile times compared to the other 600cc Japanese Supersports. This bike has an abrupt throttle response. It has track-oriented ergo, so it has the low clip-ons, the hard seat, hard suspension. Basically, this is going to place more weight on your wrists and your hands, like I said earlier. So on longer trips, you're going to experience more rider fatigue. This bike doesn't have a built-in steering damper, so you're going to have to add one to stabilize this bike.
And it's time for CycleCruza's recommended videos.
Links are in the info section of this video. For those of you looking for a great first bike to start on, check out my review on the 2011 Honda CBR600rr. For those of you that want to step up your street and track game, check out my review on the 2008 Honda CBR600rr, baby! You don't like crotch rockets or sport bikes and you just feel you're too damn old for a crotch rocket, you might want to just check out my 2013 Starboat walk-around video. Supersport or Cruiser, which one do you think is safer on the streets? Check out my Motovlog on this very topic. Hey guys, check out my new channel where I talk about anything and everything, not just motorcycle related. CycleCruza Motovlogs. Get your CycleCruza sport bike themed apparel at CycleCruza.com.
CycleCruza.com.
Hey, join in on the discussion over at my forum at CycleCruza.com, and also hit like on my Facebook page for new updates, and that's Facebook.com/CycleCruza1.